Hello and welcome to At the Forefront Fintech Conversations. My name is Amanda Perrucci. I am head of digital at Forefront Communications. With me today is our co-managing partner, Eric Soderberg, who is here to discuss Forefront's guide to launching a new brand, which is our checklist covering what we think is needed to correctly develop and launch a full rebrand. Hi, Eric. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, nice to see you, Amanda.
Nice to see you too. So, Eric, can you share for our viewers and listeners the types of firms we typically do brand work for and what typically drives these firms to want to build a new brand?
Sure. So really limited, I would say, to or focused on the institutional or otherwise said B2B fintech firms. That is the space that we focus on. There have been some exceptions. Actually, right now, we're currently doing some work for an insurance tech or insurtech company. That is primarily the area that we focus on. In terms of why do people come to us for a brand, there's probably three big reasons. One is they don't have one at all. These are brand new companies that may not even have settled on a name yet. So they truly need a full brand start to finish. There are other firms who maybe they have a brand in place, they have a website, it's something they built early on, maybe themselves, but they've just received a big round of funding. Maybe it's a Series A, and they definitely need a brand platform that can help them scale. And thirdly, a lot of firms come to us they've been around for a while, they could be fairly large firms, but whether they've changed their product line significantly, maybe they've acquired a company or two, maybe there's some brands that need to be merged together, or maybe they're just in a competitive position now where they need to be a lot sharper, a lot more focused on their message. That's probably the other bucket. So no brand, sort of a placeholder brand when a firm gets going, and then ones that have to make a big shift midstream.
Great. And when it comes to building a new brand, what options do these types of firms have to get the work done?
They've got a tremendous number of options. At a really high level, they can do it in-house, just themselves. There's probably a do it in-house with a whole network of freelancers, but they could also find a partner. So there are obviously pluses and minuses to all these approaches. If you're talking about trying to do it in-house by yourself, it's gonna, the downside there is that it done properly will take a tremendous amount of time. So if it is your marketing person that is going to do this, they'll probably have to focus on that primarily for many months. And it is also a tremendous amount of work. If you're doing it in-house and trying to use a network of friends and family, the challenge there is that it becomes very difficult just to coordinate and make sure all these different vendors are on the same page. Now, the upside of doing it in-house is it's probably going to be a lot less expensive than partnering with an agency. And sort of your agency choices, there's probably three big ones there: generalist brand agencies, there are digital agencies, and then I would say there are some specialized full service agencies. And that, frankly, is the bucket where you would find Forefront. But a generalist brand agency, again, upsides and downsides to both. The generalist brand agency is going to know how to build a brand. They have their principles and their guidelines. They understand the importance of strong brands. So that's all going to be very good. Downside is, they could be expensive. And being that they are generalist brand agencies, one day they could be working on a B2B fintech. The next day they're doing cosmetics, then they're doing a restaurant chain. Mm-hmm. So you have to make sure that they know the space, the one that we're in, fintech, or it will be difficult for them to execute on many of the things that you're going to need beyond just a logo and perhaps some key messages. A digital agency, little different. These agencies focus primarily on your digital or online presence. They tend to not have the greatest sort of chops when it comes to figuring out a brand and the story, but they are very sophisticated at understanding things like SEO, conversions from your website, marketing automation integration, all things that are very important. So I would say those are very good things to have in the mix. The only downside is that the strength of your actual brand, again, the story that you're trying to tell, your key messages, that might suffer a little bit in favor of this sort of more digital focused work. And then finally, there's the firms like Forefront. We, like I said at the top, very much focused on the space, know the space very well, and have a variety of services that can cover everything you're going to need, from design to website design to development, etc. Is there a downside to firms like Forefront? There may be. Again, certainly relative to an in-house sort of budget, we would be more expensive than that. Of course, we think you get what you pay for, but that would be a downside for, I think, any specialist sort of brand agency.
Great, very insightful. Thanks.
Right.
So, what should these clients be looking for from these agencies in terms of deliverables?
Well, the short answer, and we get into this a lot in our checklist, our brand checklist, is that there's a tremendous amount of stuff that you should be looking for. So for one, you need to find an agency that does good design, for sure. I mean, and it goes beyond just a logo, but you need to see good website design. You need to see how their design would come together in social cards, stationery, all that sort of thing. You need to also find an agency that can do the writing. I can tell you from experience, before starting Forefront with Mark Dowd, I spent about 15 years in-house, worked with a lot of agencies, some digital, some brand only, some boutique specialized firms. And the challenge you could get is a wonderful brand, and I've been the recipient of this, great brand, great story, great website, homepage, and maybe one other page, sort of a template, but it was on me to write all the copy because the brand agency just doesn't know the fintech space as well as they would need to. So that's very important, as someone who can write about your business, your products, your services. And then also, I think you always need to ask a firm, okay, if you are to build my brand, is there anything else you do with that? And by that, I mean, we believe to properly launch or introduce a brand, there's a whole, suite of communications that need to go along with that, from internal communications to client communications, thoughts from the CEO, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the things you need to be looking for if you're going with to fully outsource to a partner. You need great design, people who really know brand work, can write, and have a sense of what communications we need to go around a launch.
Sounds like you're just scratching the surface too.
Yeah, that is true.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say, consider the options that I've laid out. I would say, pick your partners very carefully. Make sure you check references, make sure you look at the work they've done. I would then be sure before you engage an agency to know exactly what it is they're going to deliver. That's a big part of what's in our checklist. Pitching Forefront here, I suppose. Our idea of a brand and a brand launch includes all the things I talked about. It talks about whether it be the name that you need, a logo, you need your color palette, you need a website design, you're going to need sales collateral, you're going to need stationery. I'm not going to list all of them and give away all the things that go into it, but then you need to communicate it, as I said before. And that is all part of what we consider a brand and a brand launch. So just, you can even use our checklist. Make sure certainly if you're comparing multiple agencies, what are you getting for your money, and look for someone who's going to deliver everything you actually need, which is quite extensive.
Great. Thanks, Eric. This was very insightful.
Well, I'm glad you had me on the program today.
Of course. Glad to have you. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.